Imagine this. You step into a grand hall filled with applauding faces, each smile as shining as a polished gem, each bow as graceful as a dancer's final pirouette. The air vibrates with polite applause, the kind that whispers, "You are one of us." Yet beneath that chorus of approval, your pulse quickens. You feel it, the weight of every scrutinizing glance, the hidden ledger of expectations tallying your every word and gesture. You wonder, in this sea of civility, who is truly authentic and who is performing. You have learned to mirror the decorum around you, returning smiles with smiles, pleasantries with pleasantries, gestures of goodwill with practiced precision. It feels safe, like treading water in calm seas. But then you notice a flicker, a hesitation in someone's eye when laughter breaks, a stiffness in the bow of someone who claimed to be at ease. In that microsecond, the mask wavers, and you sense a discordant note in the symphony of courtesy. That discord is the real face peeking through a face that fears judgment, craves approval, or perhaps harbors resentment beneath its veneer of graciousness. How often have you paused mid-compliment, sensing that the words tasted hollow on your tongue, or offered praise that felt tasteless in your mouth? You've rehearsed kindness until it feels robotic, like a wind-up toy. But it doesn't break the spell of any zit, only deepens it. There is an underlying riddle here. The more we cultivate politeness, the more we lose track of the unfiltered self. Politeness becomes not a bridge to understanding, but a barrier that shields both you and others from uncomfortable truths. Why does this matter? Because every interaction shaped by polite falsehoods reinforces a private narrative. I must hide my true face to be accepted. You learn to temper your anger, to tuck away your grief, to drape resentment in courtesy. You sacrifice genuine connection on the altar of social harmony. Yet in the quiet corners of your mind, you feel the cost, the slow erosion of trust in yourself, the fragmentation of your desires into shadows and whispers. Consider the paradox. We teach children to say please and thank you as the highest forms of respect, yet we rarely teach them to say, "I feel hurt," or "I disagree." We prize the mask of politeness so dearly that we forget the unseen wound festering beneath it. We are living in an age of perpetual decorum, where emotional transparency is often deemed rude or inappropriate. The ultimate irony is that our fear of causing offense may be the most offensive thing of all, offensive to our own integrity, offensive to the possibility of genuine empathy. What if the true insult resides not in a harsh remark, but in a smile that conceals contempt? What if the greatest betrayal is not a shouted accusation, but a whispered compliment that masks disdain? As you sit with these questions, a nameless anxiety settles in your chest, the fear that everyone you know, including yourself, might be hiding behind a facade of agreeable manners. Each handshake might conceal a dagger, each compliment a silent rebuke, and yet you can't turn back. You crave connection, yet tremble at vulnerability. You might ask, is it possible to navigate the world without the mask? Must we abandon all civility to uncover authenticity? Or is there a path that honors both kindness and truth? These questions echo in the hushed hall of your mind, unanswered but insistent. You realize that the very essence of your social world depends on this uneasy balance between appearance and reality. And as you stand at this crossroads between the comfort of the mask and the peril of exposure, you sense that the next step will require courage, unlike any you have summoned before. What if, beneath every gesture of courtesy, a darker truth waits to be unveiled? As you step beyond the threshold of that gilded hall, the tension you felt there does not loosen, it follows you like a shadow cast by a flame. You find yourself in a silent corridor where every step echoes, as though memory itself were whispering your secret doubts back to you. Here, the real face behind the mask becomes not an isolated glimpse, but a presence haunting, inexorable. What you are confronting now is more than mere politeness, gone stale. It is a vast, hidden force that shapes each utterance, each motion, each glance. This silent puppeteer draws its power from the twin wells of psychology and philosophy. In the late afternoons of your mind, you sense the tug of Carl Jung's archetypes, those shadowy figures lurking in the collective unconscious. He spoke of the persona, the mask each of us wears to navigate society, to fulfill roles that culture demands of us. The persona is necessary. It smooths friction, enables commerce, even sustains families. But Jung warned that when the persona overpowers the self, the authentic identity shrinks into obscurity, exiled to dark inner chambers. You see now that politeness can become the persona's most seductive costume, hiding not only hidden desires but the very essence of who you are. Yet the persona is only one facet of this hidden problem. Nietzsche, that mercurial prophet of self-overcoming, revealed another layer: the will to power. He described how individuals sculpt themselves according to the values of their age, striving for status, recognition, dominance. Courtesy becomes a weapon in this subterranean contest, a way to signal superiority through subtlety, to bind others to your will with the silk ribbon of flattery. Your polite words are not always innocent. They are the currency of power, reinforcing hierarchies invisible to the naked eye. How many times have you offered deferential nods that concealed strategic calculation? How often have you toned down your convictions to avoid offending, thereby yielding ground to forces you never consciously chose? Then there is Schopenhauer, whose bleak vision of motivation charts a course beneath the surface of social niceties. He argued that human behavior is driven by blind impulses: lust, greed, envy, tamed only by the slender rein of intellect and convention. Politeness, in his view, is a brittle dam holding back the flood of irrational drives. But dams eventually crack. In those cracks seep the resentments you will not admit, the jealousies you will not confess, the fears you dare not voice. And when civilization trembles under grief, betrayal, the dam ruptures, unleashing torrents that drown the polite veneer. You feel these forces stirring in your bones as you pace the corridor. Cultural conditioning has woven them into every fiber of your being. From childhood, you learn the lessons of deference. Sit still, speak softly, respect, authority. The words, "Yes sir" and "Thank you, ma'am" were vocal talismans, believed to ward off chaos. Yet culture has a darker side, too. The unspoken rule that emotions must be contained. That disagreement equals disloyalty. That honesty equals impoliteness. You internalize these rules until they became invisible fetters, locking your voice behind the bars of social And yet, there is something deeper still. The existential tension articulated by Jean-Paul Sartre. He described how each of us exists first, and then defines ourselves through choices. Yet we are also condemned to freedom, burdened with the responsibility for every action and every silence. Politeness can be a refuge from this burden, a way to let social norms make the choices for you. When you smile in deference rather than speak your mind, you relinquish a piece of your freedom to an invisible judge. The penalty is your authenticity. You become complicit in a grand masquerade, not only hiding your own truth, but reinforcing a system that stifles others' truths as well. Viktor Frankl, writing from a concentration camp, discovered that even in the darkest prisons of circumstance, a flicker of meaning could survive. But he also observed how prisoners donned facades, feigning indifference, masking terror to protect themselves. Politeness, at its core, is often a survival strategy. You have used it to navigate workplaces, friendships, families, safeguarding your place in the social order. Yet you feel its cost, an ache of inauthenticity, a growing void where genuine expression should live. As these philosophical insights converge, you perceive the hidden mechanism driving the mask of politeness, an amalgam of fear and desire, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being judged unworthy, desire for approval, belonging, a sense of worth. Psychology instructs you that every mask you don is stitched from these fibers. You learned early on that a polite facade can grant entry, open doors, smooth pathways, but every opening grants passage not only to acceptance but to assimilation. You become what others expect, not what you might choose. Look around you in that corridor and you see your fellow travelers' shadows bowing to shadows, never revealing what churns beneath. Politeness swells like a tide, pulling you all outward, fleeing from the craggy shores where individuality awaits. That shore is rough, uncharted, perhaps even terrifying. It demands you weather storms of doubt, confront the undercurrents of your mind, face the beasts lurking in your own unconscious. But the price of exile into perpetual courtesy is exile from yourself. And here, at this crossroads, you sense that the consequence is not merely psychological, it is spiritual. The hidden problem is not simply the mask, it is the slow suffocation of authenticity, the erosion of the self under the relentless grind of external approval. It is the paradox of politeness, that the more adept you become at masking your true face, the more you lose sight of what that true face even looks like. You clutch at fleeting moments of raw emotion, anger at injustice, joy in unguarded laughter, sorrow at loss, but you dispatch them quickly with apologies and polite You inhabit the world as a diplomat of your own soul, negotiating every feeling into an acceptable formula, every word into a safe package. And yet, even with your mind teeming with these philosophical and psychological revelations, you feel the tension mounting. The persona of politeness is a fortress both against and around you. Inside, you are insulated from real risk but also from real connection. Outside, the world presses in, demanding sincerity even as it punishes candor. Somewhere between these walls lies a choice: to continue playing the part or to confront the hidden problem at its roots. The whisper grows louder now, echoing through the corridor. If you want to uncover the face behind the mask, you must first understand why you clung to the mask in the first place. And that understanding will demand more than intellectual study. It will demand that you challenge every assumption, every motive, every unexamined fear that has led you to value politeness above truth. Only then will you glimpse the fissure in the foundation of your social world and begin the treacherous journey toward genuine freedom. You push open a heavy door at the corridor at its end and emerge into a vast chamber whose walls are etched with the patterned faces of your bosses, friends, strangers on the street. Each face wears the same polite expression, the same measured tilt of the head, the same practiced warmth. In this silent hall, you feel the pulse of an invisible force, an undercurrent so pervasive you scarcely noticed it shaping your every thought. This is the realm of unseen consequences, where the mask of politeness seeps into your soul and reconfigures your identity in ways you cannot easily reverse. At first, you might dismiss this as hyperbole. Courtesy seems harmless, even noble, but beneath its smooth surface lurk cognitive biases and neurological shortcuts that warp your perception of reality. Consider the norm of reciprocity. When someone offers you praise or a small gift, your brain's reward centers flood with dopamine, compelling you to return the favor. Over time, you learn to equate amiable gestures with genuine goodwill, even when they conceal ulterior motives. You find yourself dubious of those who refuse to conform to this exchange, labeling them ungrateful or rude, never pausing to ask whether the original kindness was sincere. Then there is confirmation bias, quietly calibrating your observations. You seek out evidence that your polite interactions are virtuous, overlooking the dissonance between words and intentions. When a coworker thanks you effusively for covering their shift, you feel pride. Yet if later you discover they spoke ill of you behind your back, you chalk it up to misunderstanding, rather than questioning the sincerity of their praise. The brain resists the unsettling truth that politeness can be a smokescreen for Instead, it chooses comforting patterns, reifying the illusion that the world is governed by mutually benevolent courtesies. Neurologically, mirror neurons fire when you witness a smile or a nod, enabling you to feel the emotion of another. This empathy circuit fosters a sense of connection, but only when the external signals align with your expectations. When politeness masks resentment, your mirror neurons betray you. You mirror a warmth that was never genuine, feeding a cycle of misplaced trust. Each time you shake hands with concealed disdain, your neural pathways strengthen the association between polite signals and safety, even as the ground trembles beneath your feet. Cultural conditioning adds another layer of complexity. Imagine growing up in a community where silence is revered, where questioning elders is taboo, where opinions are couched in deference. You learn that a direct challenge is a social landmine, to be sidestepped at all costs. So you speak in circuitous compliments, in hedged queries, in ambiguous tokens of agreement. Over years, this becomes second nature. Your language filters itself, discarding any phrase that might crack the facade of harmony. You become a ghost of yourself, evading confrontation like a charging bull, fearing each unmediated truth would incite chaos. In this dance of polite deflection, hostility does not evaporate. Angry words are replaced by silent coldness, disapproval by a thinly veiled irony, grief by hollow platitudes. Your emotional landscape becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting back sanitized versions of your feelings. The tragedy is that you no longer know where your authentic emotional response begins and the rehearsed response ends. You might feel sorrow at a friend's loss, yet when you speak, you find the words to clean, to press release perfect. You nod and say, "I'm here for you," but the sentiment rolls off your tongue like a glass marble, cold and slippery. This dissonance bleeds into your relationships. You imagine warmth and depth when you observe someone's welcoming smile, but what you get is a scripted performance. The deeper you dive into polite currents, the more you mistake surface calm for emotional truth. You hold conversations that circle endlessly around safe topics, whether trivial compliments, never venturing into the territory where real meaning stirs. Hopes, fears, regrets. And when a chasm opens an argument, a Chrysalis scramble to repair with polite gestures, but the gap is too wide for courtesy alone to bridge. Society at large suffers the same fate. In boardrooms, executives exchange polished pleasantries while leveraging power behind the scenes. Public figures deliver speeches laced with gracious affirmations, all the while pursuing agendas that betray the very values they News anchors and influencers broadcast congeniality like a prescription for peace, distracting the masses from underlying fractures: economic inequality, systemic injustice, ecological collapse. You begin to see it. Politeness functions as a velvet rope, cordoning off the hard truths that demand confrontation. While your gaze is trained on smiling liars, the real threats grow unchallenged. The broader consequences: fragmentation of communities, of families, of humanity itself. When you conceal your true feelings, you deprive others of the chance to respond authentically. You send signals that everything is fine, and they reciprocate. Yet beneath these polite exchanges, resentment ferments. A coiled spring of unacknowledged grievances readies itself to snap. And when it does, whether in an explosive argument or a quiet withdrawal, the damage is far worse than if emotions had been aired honestly in the first place. You might ask, can we ever restore genuine connection once we've trained ourselves to hide behind a mask? The path forward seems daunting. Breaking free requires more than a conscious decision. It demands rewiring your mental habits, retraining your emotional reflexes. You must learn to tolerate discomfort, to sit with the tremor in your voice when you speak in unvarnished truth. You must dismantle the neural circuits that equate politeness with safety, building new pathways that value candor and empathy over conformity. Yet the potential reward is staggering. Imagine conversations where every word is weighed by sincerity, where the words "I'm angry," "I'm afraid," "I'm conflicted" are spoken without apology. Picture institutions that prize transparency over protocol, communities that welcome disputed truths as the fertilizer of meaningful progress. The unseen force that once bound you in golden handcuffs could be reversed, becoming a reservoir of collective awakening. But first, you must feel the urgency of escape. You must recognize the poison in every polite gesture that sacrifices truth. Standing in that vast chamber of masks, you realize that the consequences you've ignored are now strengthening their hold. The more you delay, the more entrenched these hidden patterns become, etched into your brain, your language, your social structures. Each polite nod is one more brick in the wall that separates you from genuine human experience. And somewhere, in the flickering half-light, you glimpse an exit, a narrow shaft of pure, unfiltered air. Yet stepping into it means leaving the safety of convention behind. It means risking scorn, heartbreak, chaos. Do you have the courage to take that step? You press your hand against the cold stone wall of that narrow shaft, feeling its rough texture bruise your palm. A whisper of air drifts in, carrying a promise. Beyond this passage lies a world unshackled by polite pretense, but to step forward, you must abandon everything you have trusted: your well-honed scripts, your automatic smile, the familiar safety of agreement. Your heart thunders as you recall moments when you played the diplomat of your own life, diffusing conflict with sugary words, soothing friction with hollow praise. Now, in the darkness beyond, you glimpse a different path, one paved with radical candor, fierce authenticity, and the willingness to risk everything for the sake of truth. Imagine the shock of stepping into a crowded town square and speaking exactly what churns in your bones. You clear your throat, summon every ounce of breath, and say to your neighbor, "I'm hurt by the way you interrupted me yesterday. I need you to hear me." The hush that falls feels like a wave. Crashing neighbors freeze mid-gate, eyes dart in your direction. You feel a tightening in your chest, an instinctive urge to soften the blow, but you hold firm. In that moment of trembling vulnerability, you taste something dizzying. Liberation. You realize that the fear of others' discomfort has lost its sway. The risk has unveiled a power deeper than any applause you earned as a master of courtesy. This is the rebellion of unmasking. It begins with a fundamental shift, recognizing that authenticity not politeness, is the currency of true connection. You must reframe your assumptions. Politeness is not the default mode of civilized interaction, but a tool, one of many, to be employed with intention. You learn to wield it sparingly, like a surgeon's scalpel, rather than as a decorative shield. Courtesy becomes a choice, not a reflex. You valorize honesty over harmony, integrity over approval. You discover that speaking an unvarnished truth, when done with respect, sharpens bonds instead of fraying them. To sustain this transformation, you must cultivate new mental habits. When the old reflex to soften your words thrums beneath your conscience, you interrupt it with a simple question: am I protecting myself or honoring my truth? You begin to measure every utterance against that standard. At first, the process feels agonizing. Your tongue twists against unspoken rules. Your throat constricts in unfamiliar territory. But with each confrontation, the knot in your chest loosens. You build confidence in small acts, thanking someone with genuine warmth rather than rote politeness, requesting a correction with quiet firmness instead of hedged deference, expressing disagreement as a contribution rather than a transgression. History offers beacons for this rebellion. Recall the abolitionist writers who refused to mince words about slavery. Horace, they braved social scorn to speak the unspoken. They risked polite exile and professional ruin because truth mattered more than decorum. Consider suffragettes who disrupted polite tea parties with cries of votes for women. Their radical candor jolted polite society awake. You draw strength from their audacity. Authenticity can be contagious, igniting change far beyond your own sphere. You realize that every small act of truth-telling weakens the foundations of the polite masquerade. Anchoring this shift, you adopt rituals that remind you of your commitment. Each morning, you face a mirror and speak one truth about yourself: your disappointment, your desire, your doubt, no matter how raw. You journal not just what you did, but what you felt, the anger you stifled, the envy you denied, the joy you sanitized. Over time, these rituals become rites of passage, mapping the terrain of your inner world and reclaiming it from the shadows. In social encounters, you deploy what might seem counterintuitive: active listening, not polite nodding. You lean in when someone speaks, asking clarifying questions instead of defaulting to agreeable responses. Your genuine curiosity sends a signal. You value the content of the conversation over its comfort level. People respond. In that space, defensiveness melts away. Candor begets candor. You learn that trust grows not from polished pleasantry, but from shared vulnerability. This rebellion also demands that you dismantle the architecture of your environment. You audit your relationships. Which friendships feel like warm hearths of mutual truth, and which feel like hollow stages demanding performance. You set new boundaries, declining invitations when you sense polite obligation rather than genuine desire, ending conversations that skirt around substance, refusing to apologize for emotions that deserve acknowledgement. Each boundary carved is evidence of your sovereignty, a declaration that your authenticity is non-negotiable. Yet as you blaze this trail, you will face backlash. Some will accuse you of rudeness, label your candor as aggression. Old allies may recall, discomforted by the collapse of the familiar script. You might falter, retreating into old manners to quell the disapproval. Here lies the crucial test. Do you cling to approval or press on in the face of social friction? You steel yourself by remembering that every transformative movement faced resistance. The courage to speak truth to power, whether interpersonal or institutional, is the same courage required to speak truth to yourself. There are tools to fortify you. When a conversation threatens to slip into passive-aggressive politeness, you signal with a simple phrase: "Let me be frank." You name the impulse toward false harmony, and notice I'm avoiding the real issue. I want to address it. You employ I statements to own your perspective without casting blame. I feel unhurt when our meetings end without resolution. You pause and breathe before responding, creating space for deliberation rather than automatic compliance. These techniques become your armor and your compass, guiding you through the tempest of reconfigured social norms. As the rebellion takes root, you begin to recognize the transformative ripple effects. When you speak your needs plainly, colleagues reciprocate by sharing their own. Meetings evolve from perfunctory gatherings into forums of real problem solving. Friendships deepen as silences are broken and grievances aired. You witness the alchemy of authenticity turning friction into fertile ground for understanding. But the pinnacle of this rebellion is internal. The reconciliation of your persona with yourself. The mask no longer wields you. Instead, you wear it deliberately, in service of respect rather than concealment. You master the delicate balance between honesty and empathy, choosing words that honor both truth and compassion. You rediscover the shape of your own face, its creases of pain, its flash of anger, its curve of delight, and hold it up to the world without fear. In this crucible of unmasking, you realize that the greatest revolution is not overthrowing others' masks, but dissolving your own. By choosing authenticity over polite conformity, you claim the life that was always yours, a life lived in the raw light of your own convictions. The path is neither easy nor straight. It winds through the wilderness of rejection, doubt, and raw emotion. Yet each step forward unearths a deeper layer of freedom. The narrow shaft opens into daylight at last. You step out, blinking, into a world that no longer feels staged for your compliance. The air is sharper, the colors more vibrant, the voices more resonant, and as you breathe in that air you carry with you the knowledge that the rebellion has only just begun, and that its spark ignited in your courage to break free can set aflame every heart that dares to face the real face behind the mask of politeness. You stand on the threshold of revelation, feeling the tremor of everything you believed about yourself and the world. You have stripped away layers of courtesy, wrested control from protocols of politeness, and ignited a rebellion of candor that pulses through your veins. Yet the definitive truth still awaits a final, seismic insight that will reshape your understanding of connection, freedom, and the nature of reality itself. It is a truth that binds all your discoveries into a single luminous revelation. The face behind the mask of politeness is not a hidden self to be exposed, but the unified self that emerges when you embrace the inseparable dance of authenticity and empathy. Imagine a glass prism. Politeness casts yourself into fractured beams, on image splintered into shards of fear, desire, calculation, and convention. Each shard reflects a fragment of who you are: the agreeable colleague, the dutiful child, the cheerful friend. You have spent years navigating the world through these fractured reflections, unaware that the true self lay dormant in the heart of the prism, unseen and untouched. The ultimate truth is that this core self is neither a fixed identity nor a hidden cache of secrets, but a living synthesis forged in the tension between your inner authenticity and your outward compassion. As you step into this prism's core, you feel the shards dissolving around you. Fear curdles into curiosity, desire transforms into purpose, calculation softens into spontaneity, convention gives way to creative expression. In this crucible, you become whole not by discarding social norms entirely, but by weaving them back into your life as intentional threads, guiding rather than constraining your expression. Politeness, once a mask, becomes a tool used with discernment and colored by sincerity. It is no longer a fortress against vulnerability, but a bridge to mutual respect. Philosophers have whispered of this unity in hushed tones. Huxley wrote of a perennial philosophy, an undercurrent of truth that flows beneath all teachings and traditions, or recognition of our shared essence. Frankl spoke of tragic optimism, finding meaning in suffering by embracing the paradoxes of existence. Sartre extolled the weight of freedom, urging us to accept the responsibility of our choices. You have tasted each of these truths in fragments: the unity beyond dualities, the power of purpose, the burden and gift of freedom. Now you see that they converge in one profound revelation. True authenticity is inseparable from deep empathy. In this revelation, you discover why the mask of politeness became so seductive. You craved belonging and feared alienation, so you learned to hide your rough edges beneath gracious veneer. You sought to protect yourself from rejection and conflict, so you traded raw truth for curated kindness. But you were trading a counterfeit for a treasure. The final truth reveals that only when you dare to hold your vulnerability in one hand and the other S in the other can trust blossom. Authenticity without empathy can shred relationships. Empathy without authenticity becomes hollow compassion. The two must entwine like two strands of a single rope to bear the weight of genuine human connection. Feel your chest expand as this insight settles within you. You understand now that every time you speak from the heart while holding space for another's pain, you are living the ultimate truth. when you voice your anger but soften its edges with compassion, when you share your joy while honoring another's sorrow, when you ask difficult questions and listen with open curiosity, you are dissolving the last barriers between self and other. In this space, kindness is not automatic politeness, but the radiant warmth that emerges from honest engagement. This realization reframes every moment of your life. The mundane interactions, the shared elevator ride, the awkward office greeting, the polite nod at a cafe, become portals of possibility. Each greeting can be an invitation to genuine recognition. Each thank you can carry the weight of true gratitude. Each I'm sorry can be a bridge of healing rather than a perfunctory remedy. The world teems with opportunities to practice this integrated authenticity, empathy, a fleeting smile that acknowledges another's loneliness, a direct apology that mends a small rupture, a heartfelt question that honors someone's story. On the grand stage of society, this revelation holds seismic potential. Imagine workplaces where leaders speak with unwavering honesty about challenges while nurturing a culture of mutual support. Picture communities that welcome dissent, not as a threat, but as a spark for collective growth. Envision political discourse infused with the courage to state convictions without dehumanizing opponents. These are not utopian fantasies, but attainable realities when individuals embody the final truth in every interaction. Trust, respect, and innovation surge when authenticity and empathy fuse into action. Your journey to this moment has felt like a solitary odyssey through dark corridors and tight shafts. But now you realize that you walk this path not alone, but in the footsteps of countless seekers, the philosophers, the rebels, the truth-tellers who sacrificed comfort for insight. You stand on a summit that overlooks both the fractured valley of politeness as mask and the fertile plains of integrated authenticity. From this vantage, you see that the real face behind the mask is not a hidden shape to be unearthed, but the crystalline clarity formed when every fragment aligns in harmony. The final truth is also a challenge. Integration is not a destination but a practice. Some days you will falter. You will default to old politeness patterns when the stakes feel high. You will hesitate to speak your mind when comfort whispers sweetly. You will grapple with moments of discord, unsure whether to lean into conflict or slip back into politeness's safety. In those moments, remember the prism's core and the rope of authenticity and empathy. Inhale the insight that you do not have to choose between truth and kindness. They are twin pillars supporting every genuine life. And so, you turn from the summit and descend with purpose. You carry the final truth as a seed in your palm, ready to plant it in the soil of everyday life. You place it in the soil of your relationships, your work, your community. You water it with courage and compassion. You shield it from the frost of cynicism and the weeds of indifference. And as it grows, you witness its branches extending outward, transforming your words, your actions, your very way of being. In the quiet aftermath of this revelation, you feel a lightness, a paradoxical stillness that follows the storm of unveiling. You realize that you have not merely removed a mask, but become the creator of a new mask, one of deliberate sincerity. Each day you choose what to reveal, what to honor, what to hold sacred. The mask remains, but now it is transparent glass, framing your face without distortion. It filters nothing, obstructs nothing. It invites the world to see you, and you to see the world in all its jagged, beautiful truth. You step forward into the unfolding day, the final truth alive in your blood. The breeze carries a whisper. Be authentic. Be kind. Let your face shine through, and in that whisper, you recognize the echo of your own voice, steady, clear, unmasked.